Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Future of Space. I'm your host, Daniel Fox. Our guest today is Phnam Bagley. Phnam is the co-founder and creative director at Nonfiction, a design and innovation firm that turns science fiction into reality. She is an industrial designer, aerospace architect, and futurist who focuses on building a flourishing world on and off planet. Phnam, welcome to the future of space.
Well, thanks, Daniel, for inviting me to this. I've been seeing some pretty incredible names going through the Future of Space podcast, so it's an honor to be here.
It was just a question of time before I get to you, so I'm really honored to have you with us today. Before we venture into the amazing work that you do and we talk about what recently happened, your TED Talk now that's been viewed by hundreds of thousands of people, could you share with us three words that for you capture the essence of space?
I'm going to use words that capture the essence of the future of space specifically. I see the future as being human, as being compassionate, and as being open-minded.
Human, compassionate, and open-minded. Perfect segue for the next question, because beyond the science, the technology, the economics of going to space, what do you think is the human story of space or the human story of the future?
So one of the pretty incredible things that's happening right now is we are starting to welcome people who are not professional astronauts into space. Sure, they're not staying up there for like 6 months at a time, but we got to start somewhere, right? So we have some tourists, we have some people who have been invited to go up there and experience the magic of space, and really giving us stories that inspire each and every one of us to see a future where we could go to space ourselves. Same thing for our children, our grandchildren, and really seeing a link between why space matters to each of us and why space matters to different economies and different industries, right? I truly believe that, 50 years from now or even sooner, every single industry is going to have a foot in space, whether it's biology, education, computing, robotics, anything. Every company will have to think about their future in space in order to be competitive.
I think it's hard for a lot of people to grasp the idea of going off planet. But do you think that really going off the planet is nothing different than what the human species has done over the last 10,000s of years, where we've been expert at seeing somewhere over the horizon, and we basically figure out the technologies to go beyond the mountain. We start in one village, we go beyond the village, we go beyond the mountain, beyond the river, beyond the ocean, and now we're going beyond the planet. But the principle of it doesn't change. This is what we do, or this is really something special. What are your thoughts?
I think it's the same, and it's also new. It's the same because the human spirit wants to discover what we don't know yet, right? It's just part of the DNA. If you are not going to do it, someone else is going to do it. So might as well be the first one. And then the second part is we're not doing this blindly, right? We're not coming back to the moon or going to Mars or exploring the rest of the solar systems without thinking about the economics of it, without thinking about what kind of innovations we need to put in place for that to even happen, right? We don't want going to Mars to be, really terrible in every way, extremely dangerous. For PR reason, it would be terrible, but also, why would you do that, right? What we need to figure out is how we're going to find the perfect balance of the economics, the rocketry, the engineering, the human social aspect of it. And we are inevitably going to come up with solutions that are not only going to support such a mission, but it can also be brought back to Earth in order to support extreme environments on this planet, or mental health in ways that we haven't explored before. So to me, the potential is endless, and it can only go in the right direction, right? The negative um, aspect of this kind of exploration can come from the cynical um, view that a lot of people have about technology. For example, what is the future of social media? What is the future of AI? What is the future of um, synthetic bioengineering that will take us away from nature and put us in a future that sounds a little scary to the average person. And so that's why we have to put in place certain types of policies that give us some guidelines into doing things ethically, doing things in a way that is in alignment with the morals of the time, and make sure that whatever we do is in support of a healthy economy, a healthy humanity, and a healthy planet.
As someone who has, I mean, works, I mean, with passion into making reality science fiction, exploring the unknown, pushing the boundaries, and working on several projects is part of finding the solutions, right? I mean, you're not going to just focus on one project and dismiss everything else and think that there's only one solution in that project. It's a multitude of little discoveries that end up actually connecting the dots. So one challenge that you had in one particular project finds its answer while you're taking a break and going and explore another direction. And at the end, you look back and you go, oh my God, wow, I can see the connections. But in that moment, good thing that I was just not focused on this one. It's the same aspect of as we move into the future, these issues that we have on Earth don't necessarily have to be just coming from a single focus point of attention. It comes from a diversity of options and spaces included, right?
Yeah, and I think what you're describing is perspective. And I think anybody who has loved space since they were kids, including myself, has loved it for the sense of perspective, right? Who am I, this insignificant, human made of bones and blood and organs on this tiny planet in this gigantic universe, right? Really traveling in our imagination in space and time really helps us think outside the box, and that's what I've applied, in my everyday life. The way I think about space is not as a space nerd who only thinks about humans in space. I have to think about biology. I have to think about mental health. I have to think about material science. I have to think about, the relationship between our history on this planet and our history in the future in space, and all these other aspects of things, including business and technology. And so, one thing that I find magical about work in the 21st century is that companies are finally starting to understand that innovation comes from collaboration and overlapping of different disciplines, right? When we think about our parents, our grandparents, there was a very singular line of success. I fall into a discipline, I become very good at it, I climb the ladder, and I retire in that same discipline. I don't know anybody in this world today who thinks like this. We probably will have an average of 4 or 5 careers in our lives, and then we will evolve based on what we love, what the economy is offering us, where we live, what our interests are, and that's what's wonderful about it, right? When we hire people, we're not only looking for the fancy schools they went to or whatever GPA they had. We are looking for their life experiences. We're looking for an alignment in philosophy. We're looking for people we like to interact with and be creative with. And I love that direction, and I want to see where that goes.
That's for me is really the almost the essence of the human experience is the magic that happens when you come together and what you think would not exist or didn't exist somehow creatively through a process of diversification, different mindset, different views, different opinions. They all come to the table, and through the magic of communication and the desire to find solutions, you have these these pieces of goal that comes out, and we move forward. And somehow, one thing over the years of me working as a storyteller, I've always found that we've given up on our belief in our species, in humanity. We, for a while, I think that now we're going back to understanding that technology is there to assist us and not to replace us. But for a good chunk of time, we've always looked at technology to replace us because we've always thought of ourselves as like a failure in the equation. We're unreliable, and if we can find technology to take us out of the equation, everything is going to be either perfect for life in general or for Earth. But I think that the humanity, there's some great things about it. There's some challenges about life, about evolution. You know, it's a messy process, but ultimately there's a richness to the humanity. And if we change the narrative and we recapture this power that we have, I think that we're better at moving forward. Because I mean, I don't have any children, but I work with children. If you keep telling them that they're awful and they're bad, well, you create a low self-esteem. But if you keep encouraging them that they're capable of achieving the impossible, then you build up the self-esteem. I mean, you're a leader in your business. I guess that's the same approach that you have with your team, correct?
Yeah, and that's the same approach that I applied when I was a professor as well, right? The first day of every semester I've ever taught, I sat down with all my students and said, it is your obligation to be better at design than I ever will be. Because you're about 20 years younger, you have access to technology I never would have dreamt of, right? When I went to school, there was no 3D printing. There was no, I barely used a computer back then. I had to do everything by hand. And now you have access to the internet, you have access to AI, you have access to all these tools that help you with accelerating the process of prototyping, testing, failing, and coming to a solution much faster. And so we have the obligation to demand that of every generation. But what technology is here to do is to help us do less and achieve more, right? That's really what we do. Like, I don't know why people are obsessed with the idea of wanting to do more. I want to do less. I don't want to spend half of my days trying to figure out my schedule on my calendar. I don't want to have to spend so much time answering emails. I want all of this to be automated so I can focus on being creative, on being curious, on being proactive, and on being productive, right? These four things are really what I personally call a cycle of abundance, right? We want to have an abundant life. We want the people that we live with, that we love, that we work with, to also be abundant. So we have to take care of them a lot less. And so we can spend more time taking care of ourselves, right? Because life happens, right? There's a lot of unknown that happens with tomorrow. What kind of level of resilience are we going to build for ourselves so we can continue being creative, so we can continue having hope for the future? Because only then we'll be able to create the future of space that we want, right? Because if we're all cynical and pessimistic and giving up on good ideas before we even start developing them, we're not going to advance enough to welcome the whole of humanity up there. And that's what we want, right? We're not necessarily looking to export the whole of humanity into space and live there forever, but some of us want to go there. Some of us want to explore. Some of us want to accelerate innovation. In order to do that, we need to collaborate and live abundantly along the way.
And it's never at the expense of the other. I mean, when the children leave the family to create their own lives, it's not at the expense of the parents. The parents have done their job, but at one point in your evolution and your growth, the promise of a new start, of having your own place, because you would not develop the way that you want to have if you were staying with mom and dad. Leaving the family home, getting your own place would only elevate the wealth and the stability of the family for everyone. So if something happens to one, then the other one. America was exactly the same thing for Europe, when during the Great Migration, the ones who felt stifled and limited in Europe risked everything for a new fresh start. And as I mean, we don't have to get into the conversation of how difficult it was for the North America to rise and to establish itself. But ultimately, the US and Canada became a beacon for a new era that elevated the rest of the world. And now space is going to be the same thing. It's this continuation of constantly pushing beyond the boundary so that we can grow, and having that perspective of looking back, the first time that you leave the village and you go up the mountain and you have the capacity to look where you came from, and now you see, oh, this is where the river is, this is where the field is, this is where the other, it gives you that sense of connectedness that you have everything. And how many times have we heard the people who do go to space, this experience, we call it the review effect, the transformative, but metaphysical experience of understanding that all these stories that have happened in our history so far all come from this place, and now we can go and continue our travel. If you had the chance to go to space, would you take it?
Oh, absolutely. It depends how I would take it. If it's a short term, I could probably go in the conditions that we have now, which are like not the most comfortable in the world. I'll probably expect the toilet to break after 3 days, that kind of stuff. But if I had to go for a longer term, multiple months on orbit or staying on the moon for a while, going to Mars, then I would expect more advancement in the way that we design interiors and tools for maintaining our health, maintaining our work life, and our privacy. Uh, but I'd like to come back to the analogy that you used earlier about Europeans moving to America. I think history has been very focused on the first or the biggest migration or the most significant economically. One thing I'd like to point out is all the other countries that also migrated from one place to another. They have exported their cultures. They either went out as explorers or went out to escape, a bad situation in their home countries. And that has been happening for millennia, right? And I really want the future of space to to be taken away from this monopoly of the great economies. I want to hear people from Morocco, from Belize, from New Zealand, from Ghana, from Namibia have a very specific point of view about what the future of space means to each of them, not only as countries but as individuals from these countries going to the great the great universe. I want to understand what it means um, culturally, what it means philosophically, what it means um, uh, in the long term, and how it inspires future generation to dream that big. Because space is about the biggest dream that we can dream of so far, right? Of course, there's like black holes and all that, but they're so unattainable. It's more of a in the realm of physics, but space is almost attainable. It's like in the 1920s, it was inconceivable for the average person living on this planet to believe that 100 years in the future it'll be normal to fly on commercial airplanes. And so 100 years from now, 21, 20, 23, is going to be very common for these people from all over the planet to go to space and want to understand why they go to space. Are they going to have jobs there? Jobs that we don't have names for quite yet? Are they going to create the future of their culture, the future of their medicine, the future of uh, their what they define as success and sustainability up there? I'm actually very curious about that. One example is that I'm talking to these high school students in Belize, sorry, in Peru, and Peru is well known for having a lot of altitude um, in the country, and some certain strains of potatoes actually grow fairly well in these extreme environments. And so these students are trying to figure out, well, can we grow Peruvian potatoes on the surface of Mars? Since the surface of Mars is an extreme environment, is very cold. Is there a correlation between the two that can be explored? And I know there are like millions and millions of potential ideas like this one that could be explored for us to create the path for a future space that welcomes all of us.
Now, beyond what you're working on with Peru, do you have the sense that there's a lot more inclusivity, a lot more desire to move to space with a sense of inclusiveness with other nations, or you still feel that there's a lot more work to be done? That there's the seed is there, and but we just need to continue working in that direction. What are your thoughts right now on the current state of that wish for you?
I think it's a little bit of both. There's more and more collaboration at younger ages that are happening. Teams. Um, I was involved one time in designing the future of a university in microgravity, and we're a team of 14 people from 14 different countries. Right? We all had our own opinions, our own dreams about what that meant and what it would look like and why it should exist. And and it's very important to have honest conversation about the why and the how between all the crazy ideas. The thing that's equalizing about space is that it's hard for everyone. You can be the richest person in the world, it's going to be hard for you. You're going to be someone who owns nothing and lives in the middle of nowhere, rural, whatever country, is going to be hard for you. It's going to be almost equally hard for both of them. So dreaming big, being in the right place at the right time, and then trying things out is what's going to be interesting about this future that we want to build for everyone. And working with different cultures and different backgrounds in different countries is going to force us to find a common language. And I don't mean language as in grammar, but language as in storytelling. What kind of stories do we tell in common and also independently that make it possible for this collaboration to happen and for each of us to go to space eventually?
And you mentioned about 100 years ago was inconceivable, and now take it for granted. Um, you work in transforming science fiction to reality. A lot of people say that no, like we can't compare going to space to, the age of exploration, because that was, we're not talking about going to space. This is just being on the water. But it's really easy to judge the past with hindsight of today, because now, we're past those challenges and these seem kind of benign and ridiculous. But what the way that we have to look at history is really to understand what those challenges represented back in those days. You just made an analogy of, like, going to space, whether you're rich or whether you're poor, it's still the same challenge back in the age of exploration. If you were rich, you were still on the same boat as the people who were down, but you were having the same risk of scurvy or falling, with the ship being sunk into the ocean. I think we have to be careful about judging the past, because otherwise we have to accept that we're going to be judged by the future in the same way. Where in 100 years they're going to look back, oh my God, they were so primitive in their way of thinking and simple because they hadn't figured it out. I assume that you're always careful about looking into the past and making those judgments, right?
Yes, but it's also very important to look in the past because humans tend to repeat behaviors, good and bad. And so we need to understand and anticipate, the general population's reaction to something new, right? We as a species, I mean, you and I are a little bit of an exception. The average person is not super excited about change, right? Change is scary. You don't know what's on the other side of change. Is it safe? Will I die? Will my family and my loved ones suffer from it? Like, there's a lot of unknown, right? And that's due to the fact that education in society does not really value wild imagination, right? Risk taking is dangerous, right? And it is, but it's also exciting. And it's a little bit like a muscle that you have to work in again and again, right? You take small risk and then you grow those risks and then you make them a part of your life, and then risk doesn't become a risk anymore. It's just the way you live. And so our future in space and the belief that uh, any person on this planet could possibly go to space in the future has to start small. We can't just like force it on themselves and expect them to react positively. It's going to take baby steps, right? And that's also part of why we're here. You and I, we're storytellers. You in the way you travel, you capture nature and humans, and me in the way I design products for our fellow humans. We need to come from a place of compassion. We need to meet people where they are, right? I'm not going to show them a technology that's going to change their life and expect them to just want it, right? Part of design is to understand how people live, to understand what kind of behavior change they're ready for, what kind of technology they trust versus the one that scare them, right? A lot of the work that we do is in neurotechnology, and then we work with different scientists from different universities creating wearables that help people with different psychological conditions like anxiety and PTSD, eating disorders, and epilepsy and the likes. And every time I sit down with someone who's never heard of neurotechnology and tell them, well, if I apply electricity to this part of your brain, you will feel better. Like they'll go the other way. That's terrifying to anyone, right? But if I explain to them, well, the electrical stimulation that I'm going to give you, you can barely feel it. It's going to be outside of your brain. It's going to be on the surface of your skin. It's going to be so mild that your skin is not even going to burn. And then you're going to get used to it. And then you're going to start seeing the results, within 2 weeks. And it's going to completely change your life. So there's this hand holding that needs to happen when a technology is introduced in someone's life. And you need that person to trust, one, the technology, and trust the design and the user experience that accompanies that technology. Space is the same. We're not going to throw non-trained astronauts into an environment that can kill them at any moment. We're going to teach them. We're going to say, well, this is why we're doing this. This is why this is exciting. This is how you're going to open this door. This is how you're going to eat. This is how you're going to cut your hair. And slowly listening to what they have to say, and then have their testimonials help designers like myself enrich the solutions that we provide for them. So in the end, the environment works for them instead of them working for the environment.
If you're talking about listening and understanding other people's perspective, which today I think that it's often kind of brushed over, the skill set that is needed to be a good person in the society. We're really quick to give people the skills to be economically good participant in the market, but when it comes about being good citizens, as the world becomes more complex and it takes more effort to manage that complexity, we find people finding refuge in these extremities, the polarizations of our society, because we've forgotten to spend as much time and focus on giving the skills. You and I think that's it's part of our creative process. When I go out on expeditions, even though my goal is to capture these wild places in images on photography, I spend most of my time at the dining table with local people, staying with them because I want to listen to them. I want to hear them. I want to see what that place means to them. And it's on that table through this experience of sharing food that you realize that we're all the same. We all have the things that we value. We all want to put food on the table. We all want to care for our children. We want to have a meaning life. And then after that, it gets complicated. But it's like that everywhere. no one is trying not to create a constructive future. Even the people that we don't that we disagree with all start from a place of trying to protect whatever they believe in and moving forward. And in that space, I think that, and this is the reason why I do what I do, I really want to bring it down to what it is that it means that it is to going to space or to create new technology for you, is to make it better so that we can spend less time on the useless thing and being more productive and achieving the things that we value. Am I, is that, does that resonate with what you were explaining?
Absolutely. Word for word. Yeah. It's I cannot, you know, repeat enough that we're all the same. We want the same thing. Even in the past, we lived very differently. We had very different lives and very different relationships to our countries, to our families. But in the end, we always wanted the same things, right? We want to be valued, we want to be loved, and we want to see that there's a future for us. And yeah, and space gives us this unknown opportunity that's wide open, that I think the average person has a say in it, right? Back in the day, you kind of like waited for your superior, your king, your whatever, uh, to make decisions for you on your life and your well-being. But today, every individual at almost any age can have the agency to define what their future is. And the future is not necessarily the rest of their lives. It can be the next 5 minutes, it can be the next hour, it can be the next month, it can be the next year. And that freedom is pretty incredible when people have access to it. And of course, there are some people who are a little bit greedy and want to control others, and that's not going anywhere. It's just part of human nature. But as much as possible, space opens the door to a perspective that's so large that is very hard to fill it up with someone's ego. And I feel the same about the infinitely small, actually. When we think about, like, you know, quantum mechanics, or like how particles come together and how small we have achieved, the observation of matter. It's so incredible that in this day and age we can talk with confidence about things that our physical senses don't even comprehend. I don't comprehend what an electron is. I kind of know what it is in theory, but I can't tell you how small it is because it's so damn small. I cannot tell you how big the universe is. I just know it's big. I know it's bigger than what my brain can handle, and that's beautiful, right? And I think we should think of everything that way. Some people might think that our planet is very small and fragile, and it is. And to some other people, it is the infinite. It is, there's nothing more beautiful than it, because that's what we've been conditioned to believe, over the many generations of evolution. And beauty is actually a subject that I find very interesting, because in the hard science and hard engineering, beauty and aesthetics has always been a little bit of the fluff, right? The stuff on top that nobody really cares about. But without beauty, there's no motivation. Without beauty, there's no elegance of the simplicity of how the world actually works. There's no order, right? And so I really want to re-inject beauty in the way we think about the hard stuff and turn it into the soft stuff, because in the end, the soft stuff is closer to us. It's more complicated. But it also enriches stories in a way that can touch, a child or someone who lives in the middle of nowhere as much as someone who has a Nobel Prize, right? So that's what we have in common: the soft, beautiful stuff.
I think every time that we talked about finding that balance between these tensions is really about, the yin and the yang, the male energy and the male, yeah, the male energy, the female energy, this balance with intention. You don't want things to be too stiff because they risk to break, but you don't want them to be too soft because they're not going to have a direction. You constantly want to have the in Japanese they have this expression that expresses the perfect sword grip, right? It's one that is soft enough so that you can be agile, but one that is hard enough so that you can stop a powerful blow. So we're constantly moving forward, trying to manage these two tensions so that we can benefit the both. But if we lean too hard on one, then you lose the other. And then if we focus too much on beauty, then like La La Land can be wonderful, but then there needs to be a backbone that supports it. And I think that we are aware more and more. I was talking to Scott from Polaris now, talking about the emotion, the importance of emotions in training, which was something that was not, you know, supported back in the days of Apollo or any other training, whether in the army. It's like, no place for the emotion. Now we understand their power and we don't want to shy away from them. In fact, we want to use them so that we can be better. As a designer, as one is looking always to push the boundaries, do you feel that our society is really on the verge of redefining 100% what it is to for the human experience, like the technologies that are about to be discovered in the next 5 to 10 years will radically change what we think is possible?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so much advancements being done in longevity, for example, right? Ethically, what does that mean? Does it touch us, or does it only benefit, a small percentage of the population? Space, robotics, the way we create things, right? In the last year, we've seen AI taking a form that actually touches everyone emotionally in a very impactful way with all these images that have been created from typing words, right? People's imagination has been opened by the possibility of technology working with us. Technology doesn't work by itself. A lot of people think that, it's like all Skynet thing and the world taking over. Like, we're very far from that. I don't think anybody wants that, right? But that beautiful merging of technology with science, the backbone of I guess what we call truth today, with business, which invests in the right ideas at the right moment, hopefully, design, which connects everything, and with art, which brings the emotion we were talking about, right? So all of these big lines coming together are creating workers, individuals, family members that are rich enough so they feel complete, but also are open-minded enough. So when people come up with ideas that don't necessarily align with our own ideas, or too foreign or too new or too uncomfortable, we can actually sit down and listen to what they have to say. And I think that's one aspect of humanity I look forward to the most. Let's put all of that, you know, anonymous rage that we've put online for so long and turn it into the potential of welcoming other people's ideas.
I mean, change is by definition something that is hard to address. I mean, part of the success of our species is we've been able to take the randomness and the continuous change of nature, and we've created a little stability around it, and then we start to build on it. When we went from being nomadic and continually be at the mercy of change, we were constantly following up and having to catch up. Once we became sedentary, we started to create a certain stability, and then we built on it. But we go back again to this tension, having to navigate these two. Phnam, I want to make sure that we talk about something that recently, you've in your career of teacher, spreading the knowledge and being a mentor to many. You had a TikTok who recently went live and already hundreds of thousands of views on it. That must have been a big moment for you.
Oh, it was, and you can probably hear it. I was so nervous. I usually am not nervous on stage, but the TED experience was quite the stage for me. Um, it was big, and I specifically talked about ideas that we had here in our studio about the future of food in space. Right, the future of the food in space has been for a long time thought of as sustenance, as okay, what can we pack in terms of volume and weight that can serve a variety of food that can sustain humans in space for X amount of time. And the scientific aspect of it is absolutely necessary, right? You don't want to like ship a bunch of food up there and realize there's not enough after staying there for 3 months. But I think the human side of space, making space more human, which has been something I've been touting for about 20 years, is really at the core of what I'm talking about in that talk, right? We don't always eat for sustenance. Sometimes we eat for pleasure. Sometimes we want to experience that rich mouthfeel that makes us feel good and reminds us of wonderful life on Earth. We also want to give agency to these astronauts instead of having to prepackage everything years in advance for them. What if I want to eat something sour, in a couple hours? Can I prepare something like this? What if I want to stare at a beautiful garden, knowing that nature, growing things, tending to plants, has been shown to calm down our nervous system and help us deal with extreme situations of stress and anxiety. So really thinking about food in space as prepared in the kitchen rather than in a galley or a prep station, right? We've taken a lot of the vocabulary of the military world in order to transfer it into space, and which has been very useful for 50 plus years. But now it's time to move on to the human side of things. Why do we have kitchens? Why do we have hearths? Why do we have this communal space where we share food, where we put things in our mouths, we close our eyes, and we start experiencing culture and flavor and surprise and all of these things that make meals memorable, right? It's the same thing with traveling, right? I've met a couple of people over the years that travel without experiencing food, and it doesn't make any sense to me. The deepest way you can experience a culture is by sitting down with someone and sharing a meal, very much like the way you've been talking about it earlier, right? It's not about judging someone else's taste or type of cuisine or type of ingredients they go for. It's really meeting them where they are, understanding where that culture comes from, and taking a little bit of risk, putting that thing in your mouth and see why it's so delicious and why it's so beautiful and why it's so meaningful and important in that culture. And that's the kind of thing that I want to bring in space, not only in food, but also in all the other aspects of life. The way we work up there, the way we work out up there, the way we take care of our health, physical, mental, emotional, the way we connect with others physically, the people who are traveling with us, the family or the friends that we have back home, or the people we work with millions of miles away. All of these aspects of space need to be rethought from a perspective of people like me, designers, who think holistically about things. We don't deny the science, we don't deny the technology, we don't deny, the imperfection of the human condition. Like, we're very unpredictable in many ways, but that's what makes future solutions of how we're going to travel in space interesting, right? And that's what I'm super interested to be part of in the next few decades.
It's an amazing TED presentations, and we'll make sure that we have the link in the comments and all of the description of the podcast. I invite everyone to go and check it. It's really inspiring, and you get to discover even more what you and your team are working on. Phnam, closing on this amazing conversation, you and I, we've had several talks. We could carry on and just continue, but I want to be mindful of your time. We started with 3 words that capture the essence of space. I want you to share with us, for someone who's been traveling the world, discovering people, where they live, where they want to go, young and older, a team that you lead. What are your 3 words of wisdom?
Listen, taste, and dream.
Listen, taste, and dream. It's really about the essence of being humans, you know, understanding your connection to others, but to also your environment. Taste so you can connect with your environment, and then dream of beyond and to see where you can go. I love it. Phnam, thank you so very much. I can't wait to see what science fiction you're going to turn into reality with your team. This is groundbreaking, I think, times that we live in. Not dismissing the challenges and not dismissing the worries that we also live in. You and I, we had a common a recent comment on the advertising that we saw South by Southwest. It's unfortunate, but both both you and I, we are driven by trying to change the narrative and incorporating everyone at the table so that we can move forward better. So I'm looking forward to see what you continue doing, and I'll make sure to spread the word. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Daniel, for having me. This was very fun. Thank you.